Okay, you're rolling? All
What
right. I'm Karen Nielsen-Brandt.
I'm Dan Elliott.
Yeah, and today is August the 6th, 2004.
2004.
Going back in time, when I look at Dan, I think about high school.
In the year of our Lord, 2004?
That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, Karen, I want to tell you where I was born.
Well, tell me where you were born.
Well, in Kansas City, Missouri. And
great part of the country.
Very center part of the United States. And I went to school there. I went to grade school there and high school there. But as soon as I got out of high school, I took off and went to California, to Los Angeles, and started to work there. And found a job, which was real hard to do in those days. You know, it was the Depression, and but I went through what do you call an employment agency, and went out and had an interview, and told this person that was a plant manager that I liked photography so much, and this was a big finishing plant for 27 studios. They would all send their work into this main studio.
Wow.
But anyway, I told him all about, you know, I wanted various and sundry things. I wanted to be able to work. He said this would just be a job starting in a marking room where you prepare the paper for the printers. And I said, well, I don't mind starting out there. I says, how soon do I move up to a printer? And he says, well, you can ask me about that. But just to get my foot in the door was a real big thing, I thought.
What year was that?
That was probably 1936.
36? Did you drive out there?
Well,
did you take the train?
I put an ad in the paper.
Ah.
I said, need ride to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I think I put willing to pay part of gas or something. And sure enough, I got a call, and it was about 5 people in this car. And I remember, and you're 16. I just had gotten my driver's license, and I really wasn't up too much to fast driving. They wanted you to put the needle right on the speed limit, which I think back then was maybe 55 or 60, and don't ever let that needle get off of there. And that's hard to do if you're not an accomplished driver.
Sure is.
So
they were having you drive.
Well, you had to take your turn.
You had to take your turn.
You just drove for 2 hours, and then you moved over, and the next person moved up.
Right.
Yeah.
So you.
Yeah, but we got
rotated.
halfway. I think we got halfway we got to Albuquerque, and we stopped, and we got a hotel, and 5 of us all stayed. I think 3 in one room and 2 in the other. It was, yeah. So we finally got to California, and they took me to where my father was out there, I think, at that time. So they took me to meet him. And so that's how I got to California.
And how long did you stay in California then?
Well, I stayed in California. I worked for that company and then 2 other companies. And they were more commercial work, where I'd had to learn to use a view camera and speed graphic and that type of thing. And I worked in downtown Los Angeles, and finally transferred to another company that had branches, and they were getting a contract, and this was during the war, with Reed and Company, and they are supposed to come up with, be able to do all the reproduction work for the basic magnesium plant that's at Henderson, right out of Las Vegas. So I got this job there with another man, and he was actually the manager. I was an assistant to him, and so we had a photostat machine and an oscillate machine, and I think we had something like 12 ladies working for us, because it's wartime, and so we kept turning it out, and all this work was going out real good, and one day I got my notice and greetings.
From the government?
Yeah, from the government,
Mm-hmm.
Karen. It was time for them to, I guess, get around to me, and so I had to report, and I went to Salt Lake, I think it was, and there I got assigned to the 64th engineers topo outfit, some map making, and so that's how I got into the service, and
Were you in the Army then?
yeah, Army engineer.
Army Engineering Corps?
Yeah. So I was there for 2.5 years, and I was on the back end of a great big copy camera where you'd take film that's 20 by 24 size.
Wow.
And then a pretty big size.
That's
yeah.
big. Yeah.
And I was in right under Nimitz was the headquarters of the Pacific. It was called SINGPAC, and that's supposed to stand for Central Intelligence of the Pacific. So whenever we had invasions coming up and that type of map to be made, the overlays had to be printed and given out, and I usually got to do that. And those were all real top secret, and they have a Army regulation that if you ever see the invasion ones, which are top secret like that, you're restricted to the barracks for 24 hours. Here, everybody else was running around, when you weren't on shift, you were free to go to the beach or do what you wanted. When you were on Guam,
But not Dan. Stuck in the barracks.
there was only one Jap on the whole island, but it was still regulations are regulations, and so.
So you were in Guam.
Yeah, I was in Hawaii for 2 years, and then we moved on to Guam for 6 months. I moved up to Tokyo for 3 months. I was on Guam when the bomb was dropped. Yeah.
1945. August of 45.
You got it, Karen. You got a good memory. Yeah. Yeah, that is it, and that was quite a day for everybody. It changed the lives of millions and millions and millions of people. Saved millions and millions of lives too.
Sure did.
Yeah. So then I got to come home, on one of the troop ships, which takes 3 weeks or so, but
Long trip.
yeah, real long trip. Yeah.
What was it like?
You know what I remember coming back, that there was a cook in our company, and he was really, really good, and he was Chinese origin, and but the moment he gets on a ship, he gets seasick, and he gets real sick, so he practically just goes into his bunk and
Stays there.
Stays there.
Yeah.
And he hollered at me a couple of times, Dan, when you go, bring me back some crackers or something. You have to get something on your stomach.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd bring him back crackers and water. I think he could drink water and eat crackers.
Oh, that must have been miserable.
Oh, yeah.
I get seasick, so I can relate.
Can you?
Oh, yeah.
You turn green or something,
It's
don't
awful.
you?
It's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we finally got to the States, and of course, we had been married about 3 years by then, or
So when did you meet Marcel and where, and when did you get married?
Oh, we met her in a young people's club at church, and
And where was that?
that was in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's see, it was a real nice young people's club. We got to play ping pong, and did they have a little bit of dancing and things like that. It wasn't a very big group. I think it started out, I was only about a dozen people, and then it
Small,
got,
huh?
yeah, it got larger.
Mm-hmm.
But then everybody got closer because we would have times when we would go to the beach together, you know, on weekends, go down to Balboa, and we still have real good memories of those days.
That's great.
Yeah.
So were you married in Los Angeles then?
Yes, we were. Right there, and that's an area that's near South Pasadena, called El Sereno. And Marcel knew the pastor of that church real well. She had been in that parish, I guess, practically since she was 2 years old, and so he knew her real well.
It's a good
And
place.
she was the president of the Young Ladies Sodality, as that's what it's called, yeah. And he used to be at the cathedral, this priest that married us, and he was in charge of the propagation of the faith. And that was in the downtown cathedral, and that's where Marcel went to school, downtown. And she used to have to ride the electric cars to
get
school.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So when were you married?
we were married in August the 15th.
Got an anniversary coming up.
Yeah, like coming up. Yeah, coming up. Yeah, our son's coming from Colorado Springs with his family and should be here that day too.
And what number is it? 63?
Yeah,
63 years?
63 years, yeah. Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah.
So tell me about being married for that long.
Well, jump back to the 50 years. You interviewed us at that time.
I sure did.
When we got the bench, the first bench, it's over at Ashley Pond. It has a plaque under it with our name on it. Yeah.
That was a great idea.
Yeah, that was our daughter's idea, and they arranged that through the county, and we still like it. We still like to go over there on our anniversary and sit on that bench. And if anybody's there, we like to say, "Would you mind taking our picture?" And we hand them the
Absolutely.
camera. Let them take that picture.
That's great.
Yeah. So, you mean, what else did we do besides, let's see, that was about the 50th, or I can tell you what we've been doing since our 50th, this direction, if you want.
Sure.
Say we moved in here about 8 years ago into the condo. We gave up our house on 35th Street, and it was a duplex, and gosh, I think we lived in it over 30 years, and we really, really had a lot of stuff, and so we had to have a
Major scale down.
yeah, right, a yard sale, and our daughter and family came and helped us put on a sale, and it was pretty good. Excuse me. It's okay if I take a drink of water?
Absolutely. So tell me how you happened to come to Los Alamos. How did you get to Los Alamos?
Well, I had a brother, Frank, that was a machinist, and the company that he worked for had been doing work for the laboratory. The laboratory was farming work out during the Manhattan Project, and so he put in his application, and sure enough, they had him come up for an interview, and he got hired, and then his family moved up, and so, of course, I asked him if I could have him get me an application, and we went through the same thing then, and we moved up, and well, first of all, I guess it was in 49 that I was hired, so the early months of 49, I went up for an interview, and I'll take my glasses off for a little bit. 49, let's see, what else?
When did you arrive in 49? What month did your family move?
It was in August.
August,
Yeah.
49?
Yeah, Karen, that's when it was. And so then we stayed with my brother and his family until our furniture arrived, yeah. And that was kind of fun. Our
Was that
kids,
from Nevada? Were you in Nevada at that time?
No, we were back in Los Angeles.
Oh, you were back in L.A.
Yeah, they gave me my job back, but they gave it to me in Los Angeles rather than Henderson.
I see.
Yeah. So
you came from L.A.
yeah, they came from L.A. And we just stayed there, maybe 5 or 6 days till our furniture arrived, yeah. And then we moved in, and it was a duplex on 45th Street, and up in the upstairs, our daughter used to look out. She was only about 4.5 years old. She wasn't old enough to go to school yet, but she would see the kids going to school, and boy, she sure wanted to go to school, you know.
She did.
That was Mountain School right there. Yeah.
Mountain was right there.
Yeah, right. So that's when we got there, and I guess you asked me one time about whether I belonged to the Knights of Columbus. Well, it was about that time that I joined the Knights of Columbus, and I went with my brother and another friend, John Schulte, and he would drive one weekend, and we'd alternate, the three of us. But this one particular night I remember was must have been in January or something, and I picked my brother and John up, and we started down Urban, and it had about a half an inch of ice all over it, and I went from one curb to the other, and just wheeling and dealing. They kept hollering, "Don't touch the brakes, don't touch the brakes," you know, because if you do, you'll turn completely around or something. But anyway, I slid right out in the middle of the intersection there at Diamond, but it was okay, and we pushed it over by the curb, and we put the chains on, and then...
Scary times, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Real scary times, but that's the way it was back in those days. You didn't, or we didn't have four-wheel drive at that time.
No.
And most people didn't. They just had their regular cars. And so in the Knights of Columbus, I was a secretary, and I took the minutes of the meeting, and of course I went to work at the lab, reported to personnel, and went in and met the other photographers, and they gave me regular assignments to go out and shoot scientific setups and for reports and things that these scientists had to make, and but it was a real good time to be working at the laboratory. It was real efficient, where you didn't waste much time with paperwork and things. You just were able to do things.
Things have changed, haven't they?
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear
Right.
things are really changed, and it's hard on everybody.
It is.
It's hard on management. It's hard on
Yeah.
everything. And it took years and years, but I guess they just kept making everything tighter and tighter and tighter, I guess. And so then the exciting part of the lab work came when they would send me on the tests, and I went to Nevada, for the first test, and It was called the Ranger Fox test. And
When
there
did
was-
that take place?
where?
When was it? I don't know when.
1951.
1951.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess they said if it's possible for you, like a photo requirement, if you could get a picture of this atomic explosion that would show the blue glow that lingers at the end after the explosion is over, that's what we would really like, because that's what they call the ionization of the air.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we had to start, and there was about 3 or 4 of us that were trying each time one of the shots would go off. We were only 3 to 5 miles away, but I had this one camera that's called the Curtis one-shot camera that takes fast black and white film that has the 3 primary filters. And so it was a real good deal if I could see what happened, the first time. And it seemed like that the only way I was going to be able to do it was be able to make a triple exposure, where one exposure was for the initial blast, which was real fast exposure, the fastest the camera would shoot, closed all the way down. And then the second one would be of when the cloud is rising, and that would take some stopping of the action, about a 200th about f8. And then the third exposure was to get the blue glow. That's when you opened it wide open to f4.5, I think as fast as it was. And the film I was using, of course, was Tri-X. The Tri-X then was only 100 speed. And but I exposed that last one for almost as long as I could, until the blue glow lasted from over 30 seconds or so, 30 or so. But even the shock wave came, and that didn't interfere much with the blue glow. It wasn't a very sharp image against the black sky. So all 3 images were superimposed on top of each other. And then with this you take and develop your separation negatives, or what you take from the camera, and then from those you make your matrices, which you put in trays of dye, and then you have to roll those out, and that has to be in real good registration. And finally you hang the print up to dry, and
there's Ranger Fox.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was
And that picture has appeared in U.S. News and World Report
right.
and hangs in the White House,
Well,
or did.
it did hang in the White House under Truman,
Uh-huh.
but I think when Jimmy came along, Carter, I think he took it down. Yeah,
He might have.
yeah. I don't think it's still up, but it should be, though.
Historic in
yeah,
nature.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. If it stopped the war and everything from happening for over 50 years, why?
Right.
And
That's
got
pretty
us-
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Russians could look at it and see that's pretty impressive, too.
You bet.
Yeah,
You bet.
yeah.
So what are your early memories of Los Alamos?
Oh, way back. Oh, my gosh. You mean?
Pretty different than Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's strange, but recently it seems like we were talking about that with our kids, and some of the stories, there's a younger generation man came into the barber shop one day and was sitting in a barber chair next to me, and he says, "I know you." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Ron Alexander." And is that the right name? I think so. And he said, I used to live over in the neighborhood where you lived when you lived on Sycamore Street. And you lived in a quad and in unit. And I said, yeah, that's where we live. And he says, well, it seems like what I remember is that right after school every day, every kid in the block would be over at your house inside watching TV. And I says, oh my gosh, that's a long time ago, you know. And he says, oh yeah. And I said, well, what was the name of the program that was so important that the kids wanted to watch in those days? And that was that American Bandstand, you know, that, and I asked my kids about it, and they says, yeah, that's the truth. And even our youngest son, he was probably 7 or 8 or something like that, when he was he liked to watch I Love Lucy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there were just memories like that. One other story, we went to a birthday party for a lady that was 70 years old, I remember, a few years back, that was a neighbor, and they invited us, and her daughter and our daughter where they were real close friends because they were next door neighbors. And she told me this story. She said she came out one morning and she asked my daughter Jean, she said, are you going to walk to school with me? Because if you don't, I'm going to punch you in the nose. Just like that. Jean says, I'm not going to walk to school with you. So she poked her in the nose.
Oh my gosh.
Just like that. But we told this at a birthday party, and the people just really, really liked it because this lady that did the poking, she was the one putting on the party and everything. And and she was working then, I think she was making desserts for the bistro, the Blue Window. Yeah. And it was kind of fun, though, when old things like that pop up, old memories of things. And how are those for early days?
Those are early days.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
Good days. So you were at the laboratory taking photos for about 5 or 6 years, and then you left to buy the Photoshop?
Yeah, I did go overseas on the tests.
So in a Weetalk?
Yes, Anahuac, and I guess Greenhouse and Castle and Ivy, and those were all real good fun times. I remember that one incident about when one of them was over, I think it was the last one in '54, I got invited when the test was over. I was there rolling up the end, and so I got to be invited by the director, who was Bill Ogle at the time, to go with him and a couple other associates to Ponape, which is in the Trust Territories from Anahuac. And Anahuac is just an atoll where there's hardly any vegetation or anything like that on the main island. But out here where we would go to Ponape, it would be lush green, where they have a lot of rain and good vegetation and stuff. So anyway, when you go, though, it's an island and you have to go by a seaplane. So they had to go down ahead of me. I couldn't get finished in time to be on the same plane with them. So when I went on a separate plane. And but boy, it's a real experience when you land. I mean, when,
in a seaplane?
Oh yeah.
Whoa, I bet.
Feels like everything in the plane's going to come apart.
I bet it does.
Yeah.
I
But
that
see,
must have been an amazing experience.
Yeah. And see, I just had on shorts and khaki shirt.
Because it's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. The islands,
Yeah.
it's hot.
But when I arrived, the governor of the territories was having this great big party for the director. So here I am. I come walking in all by myself then. These ladies are dressed in formals.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
everything.
Here you are in your
yeah,
shorts.
Yeah.
So what kind of time frame, how long were you over there? Was it for long periods of time? Would you be
Well-
gone for a long period?
Well, it seemed long to Marcel
I'm sure.
because she had the children to take care
Absolutely.
of. Sometimes it was three children. Sometimes it was 4 children. Later on, and well, 2 or 3 months might be about an average for
Okay.
an operation for me. Some of the other photographers had to go for 6 months at a time.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's a long time.
yeah. It's funny, there's a photographer that used to go over there for 6 months at a time that called me up just a couple of nights ago that had just bought a condo bought a unit in this condo.
Oh, really?
And he couldn't get in, so I had to clue him on, how to get in. And so it's good to stay in touch with your
You bet.
friends.
You bet it is. That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah. Well, that was quite a trip to go clear to Pohnpei, and I didn't feel too bad about my dress after I had 1 or 2 cocktails.
It was all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Fit right in.
Yeah, really did.
It
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So then you bought the Photoshop.
Yeah.
Was it already in operation at the time you bought it?
Yes, it was.
It was. Okay.
But it was minimal. There was only supposed to be, have real good equipment, and but had very limited inventory of cameras and film and stuff like that. It was just, the thing is that he had the lease with the AEC, and that was the big thing. And you had a building and so forth. You couldn't just come into town and open up.
No.
You
You had to have a space.
Yeah, you had to have a
an
space, and you had
and
to
a
have
lease.
a contract, a lease.
Contract, yeah.
Yeah. So it took a long time, I guess, to build up the Photoshop. It took, well, we were there over 30 years, and we did a lot of community activities and things, I think, that were sort of helpful.
We'll talk about some of those.
Oh, okay. Well, this director, let me see, not the director, we'll say, it was Harold Agnew was a director of the laboratory at the time, and he was a task unit commander on some of the tests, and I was a task unit commander for the photos part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to know him, going to meetings with him and all that. So I remember one time at a wedding, he came over and held the flash for me. The director of the laboratory was holding the flash for me. So it made me feel like, photographers are pretty important people.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that was a pretty good instance when he was helping in the laboratory, and later on then he suggested, when he had a problem with people at the laboratory wanted all these scenic photos to put up in their offices and take them home and stuff like that, and they were getting them printed right there at the laboratory, and it was costing the lab quite a bit to take care of, more and more and more, and it just kept building up. And so I guess his idea was that we had a contract already to do color printing, and so we had a pick up and delivery every day, we could borrow negatives from the laboratory to take care of anybody that would come in and request a picture.
What were they pictures of?
Well, it might be aspen trees. Were real popular as a scenic photo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're gorgeous, you know.
They are.
The aspens, and some of the people actually wanted like the ski hill pictures. You know, that's a
Right.
real good picture.
Right.
And well, pictures like that, and also other pictures, some that Bill Jack had taken that were laboratory photos that he gave permission to use. And it was, I remember one of them in particular was when the snow was on the aspen trees up at the ski hill. And it was a tremendous picture. And people liked that one to put up in the living room. And it just seemed like there were pictures of the fall colors that were very popular. But see, then we could take them and print them ourselves, and after that take and mount them on masonite for them, or
Right.
frame them.
And frame them, yeah. That's really
Yeah.
good.
And that was helpful too. There's one thing about sort of a community service besides that. There's we were having a problem sometimes with people said that they would like to have portraits taken, but they couldn't afford it, you know. And so we got this idea where if they wanted to turn in their green stamp books, we would accept them. Each book would be worth $5. So these ladies, you know, they were trying to get Christmas gifts for their sisters and brothers out
Right.
of it, and they could, this way they could come in and have the family portrait taken, and then they could send those out at Christmas time, and it would be just help them immensely, because everybody up here way back in those days was trying to stretch things. I mean, trying to
Sure.
get things done, and it was hard. And then
Not a lot of money.
yeah, and then we would have green stamp books that we could take and buy Christmas presents and
It's a
for
great
our
idea.
kids. Yeah. So
It's a great idea.
yeah. So that was another one of the things we were doing. I remember I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I think it was the first ones that were, I went to those meetings for quite a while. And let's see, what else about the Photoshop?
No, you took pictures of prom,
Oh yeah, pictures of prom,
graduation,
graduation, every graduation for 30 years it was.
every graduation.
Yeah,
for
I got
30
to
years.
know Jan McDonald pretty well, you know, because he was there
Right.
with the orchestra band, marching band like thing, and he'd always wave at me when I would come in, get ready to set up to take each graduate as they marched by and
Right.
everything. Yeah, those were quite the days.
Yeah, so you must have quite a collection of photos then.
Oh yeah, that's still a problem where we're going to have to try to figure out some way to get them digitized or something, because of the space it takes. And
Where do you keep them?
well, right now we have them stored right here in the building, but
Eventually.
yeah, we're going to have to move them.
something.
And so if we were ever to sell this unit, why, gosh, it would be a tremendous job to try to move negatives and everything.
Sure would.
Yeah,
Well, you've probably won a lot of awards for your photos too.
quite a few.
Yeah. Talk about some of those. What were the subjects and what were the awards?
Well, I joined the Professional Photographers Association of America, but first I was the state organization, and I was in that for quite a number of years and worked my way up there, and I was president, and had the convention up here in Los Alamos, and we got rooms. That's just when the Los Alamos Inn opened.
Uh-huh.
So we had a place to have it and everything.
That's great.
Yeah. And we'd have speakers come from California and all over to talk at the convention, and so it was quite a convention. It just made you think that it was one way to get going and keep things going and everything, and so I decided to join the National, and I guess I've been in the National for more than 40 years, I would guess.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what were your favorite subjects to shoot? What interested you the most? Did you have a favorite subject for photography?
Well, I guess I'm more experienced in portrait photography, but it wasn't my favorite thing, because once I had a chance to get outside and get away and get in the outdoors in the Southwest like this, why, that's where I wanted to be. And because, I'd have customers come in and say, well, we just had a good time. We just went to Canyonlands, and they start telling me what it was like there. I says, oh my gosh, I would sure like to go there, but try to take 5 kids, and Marcel and I we'd have to plan and plan and plan and plan to go to something like that. But by golly, I kept hearing more and more stories. They'd say, well, if you go to Canyonlands, you have to get in there.
Slot canyons.
Yeah.
The sandstone.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah.
And there's one that's called Chesler Park that's just fabulous. That's made out of sandstone, red sandstone. That has pinnacles, they're gorgeous. And it looks like a cathedral, And this lady that was telling me, her name is Jenny Bell. She's the wife of George Bell, a famous hiker, climber.
Mountaineer.
Yeah, mountaineer. And he says, you have to go over Elephant Hill. And I said, well, what's that? He said, well, that's the thing that separates the boys from the men, or the men from the boys, really. You get there, and she says 9 out of 10 just won't go over it. It's just too much. So that really
inspired you?
Yeah, that inspired me. I got to do that. Yeah. So he had this old Scout, and an old Scout, and when you put it in low drive, it's like a tank. It can go over anything practically. But I didn't realize that when you drive over Elephant Hill, I made the whole family get out and walk and everything, but you have to drive up stone steps. Mm-hmm. And then you go along the edge of a canyon where you look straight down, and you're right on the very edge of it, and you can't make the turns, and you have to back up, and you're sticking like one wheel back over the edge to make the turn. And I'll tell you, when
it's terrifying.
Yeah, when you get up to the top and over it, you really take a deep breath. You do. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. And there was a restaurant there in Monticello. You got to write your name on the wall that you went over Elephant Hill.
All right. That was the thing.
Haven't
been there.
Yeah.
Haven't been to Elephant Hill.
Oh, you should go. The Naveaux used to love that. Do you remember Florence and Hal?
Yes, Hal and Florence, yeah.
They really liked it. I think they had one of their kids get married there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So that was...
So you shot a lot of weddings?
Shot a lot of weddings. Florence Naveau used to be in charge of weddings over at United Church. Mm-hmm. And if I was a little bit late, she'd get on the phone and call me up. Dan, you better get over here now. the bride's here and she's dressing and you need to take some pictures. And she was a real good friend to have.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But I guess I really did like to get outside and take scenic pictures better than portraits and weddings.
Right.
I kind of like still architectural photography.
You do.
I had a picture in the window. You remember that church that Grothus has now?
Mm-hmm.
When that was first built, I went over and I took pictures of it, and I put them in the window. It was just because it was a challenge and everything, and I entered it in the state convention, and I got an award. And well, the architect Flato came by and saw it, so I was in with him then. Anytime he wanted any pictures taken up here, he'd call me. In fact, he wanted
That's good.
a brochure made up, like of some of the schools he had designed.
Mm-hmm.
Little Forest School he designed too,
All
and I
right.
got to take a lot of pictures of that. And so that was architectural photography was kind of fun. And then, of course, the commercial photography that I did, I used to have one customer. His name is Joseph Lone Wolf. That's an Indian down in Santa Clara. He lives in Santa Clara, but I think he's from another tribe. And he makes these pots that he works on them for years. Sometimes he puts in 3 or 4 years, just a little tiny delicate work on them.
Mm-hmm.
So his wife, Kathy, would bring these in and hand it to me. Be careful with this one, will you? And I said, why? She says, it's worth $25,000.
Right. Oh my goodness.
So I would try to be very careful, and they're really hard to do because they're real shiny, and you have to keep
The reflections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to try to keep the reflections off so that you can see the fine
The detail.
Yeah, detail, Karen, is.
Yeah, I bet
So,
that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a real
I
challenge.
bet that's a challenge indeed.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get involved with the Los Alamos education group then?
Well, we were going to lunch after we retired out at the golf course, and Reimer Schreiber was giving a talk after lunch that one, I don't remember what day of the week it was, but, and Steve Stoddard was there, and it was all about energy and testing and things like that Reimer was talking about. And he was retired, and he was living here in the condo, and it was just the thing to do. But then it was just about the same time that Bernie Storm got this idea and saw the display in the museum that was showing the Los Alamos Study Club. Is that a club?
Study group, yeah.
Study group.
Mm-hmm.
Their side of it, which was pretty gory, a bunch of Japanese bodies and things. And so we wanted to try to get together something to counter it so that people would get the true picture and not just that. So I went to my neighbor, I remember, that had been talking about he liked Truman so well, and he was real anxious to help us. He thought that we should have a meeting and see what we could do. And I said, well, Steve Stoddard's already applied for a grant from the, I guess it was the VFW,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or the Legion, American Legion or the VFW, one of those two. And he had an application, and this man said that he'd fill out the application, and he put $50 on the table, and he suggested we call ourselves the Los Alamos Educational Group. And before you know it, we said, well, what do we, he says, you call yourself a coalition. And we called ourselves a coalition, and we started right in, and I went next door and borrowed the book that this neighbor had, his father had, of all the war pictures, like the surrender and Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, I thought, was a real good one to have in there, you know, the Day of Infamy, you know. And I got pretty excited about doing all this, but I would work late hours, and it was quite a challenge because if you get the grant, once we were awarded, you had to spend the money within 30 days or something. And so we had to get the display up and have a bill showing that we had spent it, you know.
Wow.
So we got this man through the museum. There's a young man that works at the museum, Omar. He's the assistant director over there, Omar Jublin. Was very helpful, that I worked with for years and years. You know, he can tell me who to contact, and so I was getting the displays made by this man, but I was furnishing him the pictures, and then I'd get the text, and then I would call up and ask him how he's doing. Well, why doesn't he send us more proofs and things like that? And then we eventually went to using faxes because it was getting close to the time when we said we would have it up. And so I think we got it up, and everything worked out real good, and I don't think we would have ever had one near as impressive as that, because it was done by a real professional. Later on, I was able to make other types that were about energy and smaller, that we would put up, and then I think we took the big display down, and I stored it here in the building, and then we had to also get those same displays out when we had the Hiroshima and Nagasaki days like they're having today, yesterday, and what caused some more commotion. They used to do that. Well, we had the lodge, and we had the pond, and but I had to put those same displays up in the lodge, and I had to get hardware on the displays.
It's a lot to move around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put pulleys and ropes on them to raise them up, so that they would be there when the director of the laboratory would speak at the lodge. So, you know, that was, I thought, good community work.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
Also what we did was we took and asked people if they could bring their paraphernalia of war things, their guns and their swords, and a lot of them, their medals, you know. If you got a Bronze Star, Purple Heart, or any of these things. You could bring those and display them, and your name would be put there, and people could walk through, and they would see that, and they would see what.
That's nice.
So I think that was a real good thing for the community to come and see that and commemorate that days of that for all these servicemen too. You know, we put up these 2 rocks over at Ashley Pond, these 2 great big plaques on the rocks. And I was one of the ones who went out and searched for the rocks with 3 other men. And one of the men, his name is Mel Price, you know, and he thought it would be real good if we would call ourselves the Rockettes. So I always got a pretty big bang out of it. And Bernie Storm wanted to take our picture and showing us kicking one leg all up together and everything. And
Did
so,
she do it?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Oh, good.
But I guess one of them wasn't there, and so she took him later, and then that was pasted in, and then we took a picture of that picture and for him and everything. I think it just shows three of us in some of the brochures, but and I think that was a very good community thing. Those plaques up over there that we did.
When did those go up? Do you remember?
Oh, I have it written down here, but I'm trying to think. One was 50, no, it couldn't be 50s. It was in the 90s. 95 is one. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been about 10 years, close,
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
Coming up on 10
The first
years.
one maybe was that. And
Yeah.
then again in 99, I think, 50,
Right.
99, 95, 99. And Don Keir was in on that. He was, organizing that and everything. And boy, he really, really worked hard on that. While I was in the lodge, he was taking care of the stuff out at the front where they were having the speakers and so on. And trying to get the chairs there and all that. But
Well, as with all things, it takes a lot of communication with a lot of different
Yeah.
people, doesn't it?
Sure
It's
does.
involvement by a lot of people.
Right, yeah.
Well, have you developed a life philosophy? Any particular beliefs that you'd like to pass on?
Well, let's see. One of the beliefs that I would like to talk about was in the paper this morning, maybe. Seems like our group that we just talked about, as the other group, the study group, and they have a picture on the journal this morning of their director, executive director, Mello, I think it's called.
Greg Mello.
Greg Mello. Would be my idea, and I think I've heard it from other members of our group maybe, that if a writer like you, Karen, or someone could get the information of where he gets his money, that should be known to the people of Los Alamos, because he's out to try to do us in, He's not helping Los Alamos at all. He's doing the reverse. He's just causing trouble for everybody up here, And that's just 3 or 4 people that are in that group. And we got 20,000 employees or so.
Right. So you were talking about Greg Mello and his where his money comes from.
Yes, If there's any way that could be brought out and people would know, I think that he might not last very long in what he's doing if he doesn't have the resources. I really do. I think it would be doing the community a great, great favor if that could be brought out, and somebody like you as a writer could really write a good story about that.
Yeah.
Now you wanted me to talk about, still want to talk about that some more, or do you want to go to childhood?
Let's go to childhood. Let's talk about, did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had one brother and one sister, and
Brother Frank.
Brother Frank
And your sisters?
Dorothy.
Dorothy.
Yeah, and she's 2 years younger, and my brother was 2 years older. Or a year and a half. And I guess I can remember living in Kansas City, if you want to go way back, like you say, when I was growing up, and there was a big electrical storm back then, and we had two-story house, and I was up in the bedroom upstairs, and we had an antenna that was on to our house and ran clear across to a great big tree, and it had these great big insulators for the wire and everything, but when the lightning struck, it knocked this antenna down, this aerial, radio and aerial they called them, and it took and it drove the copper from the wire all through the insulator. That's how powerful
The lightning.
lightning is, and it really got me to respect lightning when I picked that up and I saw that, and I remember that was one thing that sticks in my mind. That goes way, way back, and then I guess I remember my brother got to go to California and stay with my grandmother and aunt and uncle because he had asthma, and he got to go for a school semester, I think, and they wanted to see if it would help him if he would get away, and it helped him a little bit, but getting away from his friends and his schoolmates and all that was kind of hard on him. And so then later on, when we were having problems, I got to go to California for 6 months, and I got to go to Cathedral High School in Los Angeles. I think it was in my junior year for one semester. And I remember coming back then. I was really glad to get back, though. And
To Missouri?
Yeah, I was.
Did you graduate from high school there?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
But those were hard times, and I had a paper route.
Was it like financially hard times because of the Depression?
Yeah, I was the only breadwinner. There were 5 of us in the family, and I was the only one bringing in any money. But I was throwing papers, and then I'd go out and collect, and also I had a soliciting crew that I was in charge of. So I started in pretty young, because it was really hard to come home and study at 10 o'clock at night.
Sure was. Was your dad gone away from the family?
My dad, health had broken. He was in charge of a great big company, and called Central Coal and Coke, and there were 200 employees or so that he was over. And each day he would have to tell another 20 or 25 to go, and finally he had to tell the last 25. And, there were bankers and all these different ones were jumping off the roofs and all this kind of stuff. So he went to live with his mother and his brother and sister in California, trying to work in real estate, because in Kansas City there was no jobs. And his health was pretty bad too. So then that's when I went out. I had a place to stay too. I stayed there with them for a while, and then I had an uncle and aunt in Pasadena that I stayed with for a while. And then my father and I got a place, and my brother came out. And then my mother and sister came out. So we all got together finally out there that way.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell you back about about my sister working with me in downtown Los Angeles. She was working for, she was only about in her teens, I don't know, was 14 or 15 years old, and she was addressing envelopes, and she didn't know how to type, and she was just using the hunt and peck system.
Oh my.
She was scared to death she was going to get fired any minute because it was so slow. So finally he came by and asked her if she would do some filing, and she was real happy. But both of us would bring our lunches in brown bags in those days, and we'd meet at the public library and sit and talk, and she still remembers that. But and she really grew up to be a real good typist, and she worked in the top advertising, one of the top advertising agencies in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Bart A. Stebbins Advertising. And so I guess you could say that
She got over her hunt and peck.
She really did get over her hunt and peck, yeah.
So did all of your children graduate from school in Los Alamos?
Yes, they
Everyone
all
graduated from high school?
all graduated from Los Alamos,
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure they all did.
and they all have college degrees,
Uh-huh.
and
And
we
how many grandkids?
only 10.
Only 10?
Only 10.
Well, gee.
And
That's
three great
And 3 great-grandchildren.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So,
So we're pretty well off.
do you get
with
to see them?
Not too often. We have some coming for our anniversary
Good.
on the 15th of August, which isn't too far away.
No.
And that'll be a 4 and 5-year-older that are a lot
Yeah,
of fun.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
So what have you learned in this lifetime?
Oh, live and let live, I guess. Yeah. Yeah,
It's good. That's good advice.
yeah. Well, I've learned to appreciate my wife.
I bet you have 63 years worth of appreciation.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Isn't that a long time? Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is.
Well,
How do you make a marriage work for 63 years?
well. I don't know if you have to work trying to make it work. If you just do what comes natural, I guess, and do a little forgiving now and then, and do something nice for your wife once in a while. That
That
seems to help.
helps.
Yeah.
That's good. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have a little garden out here that you take care of,
Oh,
don't you?
yeah. Right.
Uh-huh.
I've had that for 8 years now.
Uh-huh.
And I grow cosmos, all kinds.
All right.
Seashells, sensationals, all different varieties. And last year, the big thing that people were talking about were the seashells. They look so much different than the others.
It's a kind of cosmos.
Yes, uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
They're sort of like this picture. You're looking, if you look straight ahead, you'll see it.
All
See it?
right.
Or did I move it?
I think you moved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I moved it.
I don't see it.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It's in the other room.
Well, you got beautiful photos.
Yeah.
Though. I see some of the beautiful photos. Well, let's see. You wanted Ricky to take a
Shot of this picture.
shot of this picture, and I think we should take a shot of the garden, if you can. And if we covered everything that you can think of.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
This is inside here, maybe. I had it out here.
Got the Ranger Fox.
Here it is.
Yeah. I don't know how you want to do it. You need to zoom.
Yeah, zoom into it. Okay.
Great.
Okay.
We're looking forward to your ceremony on the 19th.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you. It's quite an honor.
Good. I think we're done.
Okay.